Okie doke. Back with another Workcation Tailwind CSS view, whatever the hell stream. So, um, there's a couple things. I mean, one main thing that we kind of forgot about when we were working on it last time. I kind of thought we were mostly wrapped up, but we kind of totally forgot about this drop down, which Steve has designed for me over here. So I thought it would be cool to kind of build that out and make sure that it kind of works responsively. It is somewhat interesting, the responsive stuff, because it has to collapse into this view on mobile, where the drop down is just kind of like permanently open and like not even collapsible. So it'll be interesting to figure out how we want to make that work. But yeah, for now, I think what we'll do is we'll just start with trying to build the sort of desktop version and see where we get. There'll be some interesting things, like making sure when you click outside of it, it closes and stuff like that. But yeah, just kind of bang it out and see how it goes. So I think what we'll do to start is we'll just build the dropdown as part of the site header component, just sort of in line. And once we have it figured out and kind of have the API figured out and how it's going to work, then we can figure out if maybe there's a way to extract it into something reusable. Do you prefer Figma over Sketch? I do prefer Figma over Sketch for a few reasons, but honestly the biggest one is performance. Sketch I find to be sort of unstable and slow. It just like really chews a lot of the time and just is super brutal to work with when you have lots of stuff going on. You're doing a lot of zooming in and out. There's a lot of like rendering bugs, or sometimes like a shadow we partially cut off until you zoom out and zoom back in again. I find Figma performance, even being a web app, is 100 times faster and more reliable than Sketch. And it's really convenient for me and Steve because everything is just stored in the cloud, so we have access to each other's files all the time. We can both collaborate on the same thing at the same time, which is really cool. So highly recommend Figma. It's probably the most impressive piece of web-based technology I've ever used. This isn't really like a real world app per se. We're not building out the back end or anything. We're just trying to build out the UI and kind of, with some interactive behaviors and stuff like that. So we're not building the whole thing. We're just kind of working on the front end. Okay, so let's take a look at what markup we have here. So here's the image. Here's the name. The name is hidden. And then we have this stuff down here, which is basically going to become the drop down at some point, right? So right now we have it hidden on small screens and above, which I don't think is what we actually want. We just want it to be sort of toggleable based on the drop down state. So why don't we start by just trying to have this thing always on the screen, and then we can work on making it sort of toggleable. So yeah, let's just say instead of SM hidden, we'll just say SM BG white, SM rounded LG, and see what we get. All right, so this is all disastrous, right? So why don't we go SM absolute too, so that it's taken out of the document flow. Okay, so it's positioned all the way off to the right there, which isn't what we want. We probably want it right aligned. So why don't we say SM right 0? Okay, so that's a little bit better. Now it looks like there's like some padding or something in the nearest relative container that is making things behave a little odd. Let's go ahead and make this the relative container for it. Okay, so now it's a little narrow, but that's something we can work with. So why don't we give this a width? We'll start with like 64, see what that gets us. That's probably too much. There's 56 built into Tailwind. Let's kind of look, where does Steve have it lined up relative to this text approximately? It kind of goes to like between lister property and trips. So maybe 48 is going to get us close to that. Yeah, this is probably going to be pretty good for a size. We got a little bit of a gap here, probably more than we want. So why don't we say SM top 0, which is probably what it's doing by default anyways. Oh no, it's not. And let's think. I'm actually a little surprised that ends up showing up where it does. we actually don't want top 0. We want it where it is. We just want to control the margin. So basically, if we say SM empty 0, we'll see that it shows up directly under the image. And that's because this is a div and there's a div above it. So without doing any extra positioning, it's going to try and position itself where it normally should go, which is directly under that image, which is what we want. Now, we just want to kind of tweak it a little bit so there's a little bit of space. Steve has it kind of lined up bang on with this line, which might not be practical for us to do, and I don't think it's important because it's supposed to feel like a layer floating on top anyways. But either way, we do want like a little bit of a gap here, probably something like maybe like an MT, somewhere between MT2 and MT4. So let's see. So MT2, MT3 actually gets us like directly on that line like Steve has. So I don't know, we could say MT3 is probably good. All right, let's roll with that. So there's also a really big shadow on here. Let's see what Steve has. He's using our XL shadow. So we'll just go ahead and add that as well. SM shadow XL. And yeah, now we got a nice little shadow there. He's got the text set to, what do we have here? Gray 800. So let's say that these should be SM text gray 800. All right, so that's a little bit more visible. And I think we're going to want some padding here probably. Now, the way that we're going to style these is there's going to be like a full bleed sort of hover thing. So probably if the first item's active, we're still going to have like a wrapper that kind of goes around partially, but not all the way. I did a bunch of sort of poking around different apps to see what people do for dropdowns a while back. I remember doing a little bit of research here. By the way, if you want a good reference for lots of good back-end kind of dashboardy UI stuff that's really well done, I always like Shopify as an example. So you can see here there's like a gray background that covers the whole thing, but there is a little bit of a gap at the bottom and a gap at the top, so it doesn't go all the way up. And this is probably the most common treatment I've seen for like nicest looking drop downs. So I think we'll just kind of borrow that treatment. All right, so let's shrink this back down so we got a little bit of space. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll add on small screens, we'll do like PY2 or something on here. And then for each one of these links, we're going to do probably like PX4, PY2 as well. And we're also going to do SM MT0 because we don't need a gap between them anymore. Okay, so right now we got this like hover text white thing, which is not what we want, obviously, because actually, you know what? We actually do want that because you can see the text still goes white on hover here. So that's convenient. But what we want even more, oh, and I made this mistake here. This should be SM. We want to make sure that we do like a BG Indigo 500, I think. We can double check that. Indigo 500. Yeah, okay. So we don't want that always, right? We only want that on hover. So we could say SM hover BG Indigo 500. And now we've got like the basics of this kind of drop-down styling. To me, I feel like those paddings on the top and bottom make it seem like additional items could be added, removed in additional contexts. I don't know if I fully agree. I mean, it's super common to do drop downs that way. I think like here, there's a little bit of a gap, right? Outside each item. If you look at like GitHub, same thing. They've got a little bit of a gap above it. Basically every implementation I've ever seen of a drop down has the extra top and bottom padding around the items. So I've tried doing it where it goes all the way up to the rounded top and rounded bottom, and it's never really just felt right. It sounded like a good idea in principle, but then when I tried it, it just didn't feel good. So we'll roll with this anyways and see where we get. Okay, so let's, I guess, let's double check that this is still like reasonable on mobile. Yeah, so nothing has changed on mobile. It's just here. But we want that stuff to be invisible unless the drop-down is open when we're on desktop. So why don't we add a dynamic class binding here, and we'll just say drop-down open. If so, then we want to add SM block. If it's not open, we want to add SM hidden. So it'll always be open on, again, this is probably, now that we have like drop-down open and is open, that's like probably a clue that we should be moving this into its own component, but we're just going to work on getting it to work here first. Okay, so that's gone now, and if we change drop-down open to true, it appears, and if we shrink this down, that stuff is there, but if I set this to false, that stuff is still there, right? So it's behaving the way that we want. So let's add a method for toggling the dropdown. I want to say this dot dropdown open equals not this dot dropdown open. Don't forget your brackets, someone said. I'm guessing maybe you meant that for a class. So the class, the vbind syntax for classes in Vue is very, very flexible. You can either pass like a whole string, which is what we're doing here. You can pass an array, which in this case would behave the exact same way because it's just going to be the first item in the array is going to be conditional. Or we could do this as an object syntax. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you can even do an array that has object values inside of it. So pretty cool. Let's go with the array syntax. I think that's like a good default because it's easy to expand on if you need to or whatever. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. In this case, it works either way. Okay, ever tried Elm? I have not tried Elm, but I've heard that it's a fun language to work in. Okay, so now we just want to make it so that we click this and have it open. So where this gets kind of interesting, I think, is that means that we probably want this div to be a button. And we kind of don't want it to be a button on small screens, right? This is one thing I'm trying to figure out the best solution for, because it doesn't really make sense to have this be a button here, but for it to be a button here. So two ways I can think to solve that. One is to just duplicate the image and have two elements that we conditionally swap between, which is probably the right way to do it. So why don't we do that to start? We'll make this a div. We'll add a button. We'll give it a type of button since it's not in a form and it's not a submit button. And for the class, we're going to say SM. Guess it could just be block because we don't have multiple items in it. So it'll be hidden SM block, and this will be SM hidden. And now because this is hidden on small screens and up, we can actually get rid of the classes that are just targeting larger screens. And that means here we can actually change these to just be the size that we want, which is 8. We can get rid of the small stuff, and then we'll still have this border gray stuff change on extra large screens. We could set it as a disabled button. I just don't really know what difference it makes. It just seems kind of like incorrect to be showing like a disabled button at the mobile view. It's like, what's this button here for? What does it do or whatever? I guess it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I guess we could do it either way. Yeah, I don't know. We can maybe experiment with that too if this solution doesn't go as we expect. All right, so I mean, everything still seems okay here. Yeah. So let's get it so that we can click that and make it work. So we'll just say @click equals toggle drop down. All right, so that's good. Now we probably want to be able to hit escape and have that close. That's like a pretty common thing. And we also want to be able to click outside of it and have it close. So let's do the escape thing. So the way that I normally do this is I have like a mounted callback here. So we can do like const on escape equals I guess this receives the event, and we want to say if, and then we got to figure out what the key is. I can never remember how to do this off the top of my head. MDN key down key code. Now it says deprecated, so what should we use instead? Keyboard event.key. That seems like a reasonable thing to do. So e.key, and let's see. We'll look at the list here. Let's look for escape. So it's just going to be escape as a capitalized string. So if e.key triple equals escape, oh, this is a guard clause, return. Otherwise, we want to say this dot drop down open equals false. And we probably want to check if it's open too. If not, drop down open, or yeah. And then we want to do like document.add event listener key down on escape. And then we want to remove this event listener when the component is unmounted too. So if I remember correctly, the best way to do that is to do something like this dot once. Let's check out the Vue API docs, because I'm actually trying to remember off the top of my head what the difference is between these two things. So if you look at once, we can say listen for a custom event, but only once. This event will be removed once it triggers for the first time. So I guess on is fine. I don't think it'll make a difference in this case. So there's a syntax where you can do like a hook colon thing. So out of curiosity, another thing I'm not totally sure about is the difference between before destroy and destroyed in our case. Before destroy, tear down watchers, child components, and event listeners, and destroyed. Shouldn't make any difference. Okay, so there's, if you go view on hook destroyed, there's definitely an example of this. I guess I can never remember the exact syntax. Let's see if I do a search for this. Yeah, this is a thing. And it references me because I'm the one who figured out that you could do this. Okay, so hook destroyed. Here we just want to say document.remove event listener key down on escape, I think. Let's double check. MDN remove event listener. This dot drop down open. Yep. Good catch. I can never remember if remove event listener needs the type. Yeah, it does. Kind of stupid. You'd think it would just know that like remove this listener, but I guess there's an argument to be made for why it works that way. All right, so, I mean, with any luck, if we did this right, we should be able to hit escape now and close this. Yep, and we can. And then just to do like some console.log closing, let's just see out of curiosity when it runs. So if we hit escape normally, it doesn't close. If it's open and we hit escape, it closes. But it doesn't close if it's already closed. So it's working kind of the way that we want. Now we've got this like gross focus ring around that. So why don't we style that to be a little bit nicer? Let's think. I think what we should do is we should move the border up to the button. And we're probably going to want to do SM overflow hidden too. So the button gets a little bit bigger because the height is not built into the, we could solve that too. We could say put the height on the button if we want things to be the same as they were. And then we could just do H full, W full. All right, so now we can do something like SM focus outline none, SM focus maybe like border white, something like that. So now if we tab through here, now it turns white, which that's not too bad. Yeah, cool. All right, so let's make it work so that we can, yeah, the thing about like the key up escape thing, yeah, Daniel is correct. The reason that we have to do like this sort of imperative event listener stuff is because if this is open, but we've got like one of these items focused or something, then hitting escape won't actually work because escape only fires if the button has focus. All right, so let's get the close on click away thing working. So a couple ways I've done this in the past. One is you can just listen for events on the document, and anytime a click happens that isn't inside of this element or this element, you can consider that to be like a click away event. There's libraries you can use for this too. But that gets tricky in some instances when you're doing things like using portals and stuff like that. And I think it's just like a bit of complexity that's just not super great in general. So something that I have enjoyed as a solution lately is to actually do what GitHub does. And because GitHub does it, I've sort of just trusted that they have a good reason for doing it this way instead of a different way. So with GitHub, you'll notice that if I click this menu and then I try to click anywhere else on the screen, notice how my mouse cursor doesn't change over these links or anything. If I try to click like this issues link, nothing happens. It doesn't go to the issues link. It closes this, but it doesn't go to issues. And the reason is because the way that GitHub has implemented click away is they have a full screen invisible div overlaid, and they're just listening for click events on that div. So basically, if you open the dropdown and you want to click away, it actually requires a click away and then another click onto the thing that you actually want to select. Which is kind of nice in some ways because you can just click here and not worry that you're accidentally going to click something else. You have to kind of make 2 clicks to get away from that kind of focus trap, which is cool. So I found that to be like a really nice solution because it's actually super, super easy to implement. I say super easy to implement. I'll probably be completely wrong, but let's just try it out here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a div. We're going to give it, actually we're going to make a button. If you're ever adding a click event to something that's not a button, question yourself. It very likely should just be a button. So here we're going to say close dropdown, and we'll kind of write the logic for that just to make sure that, I mean, I guess I guess if this is only showing when the drop down is open, then we can just set drop down open to false. Let's put this inside here. And we don't want it inside there necessarily. What we want, I think, is a div wrapping all this, and we're going to move a couple things to this div. So we're going to move this conditional class to this div, and let's see if that is everything still in the right place. Things are getting a little spooky here. Oh, that's because this button doesn't have any styling on it yet. So let's give this a class of fixed, opacity 0, top or inset 0, which is going to have it fill the whole screen. All right, and I think it actually just worked and we didn't even notice. No, it didn't. Okay, that's fine. We'll figure it out here. Okay, so let's take a look at where our button is. So our button has a height of 0, which I find odd. If we say display block, does that change the dimensions of it? No. So this is another one of those cases where I've always found it unusual that this doesn't make the item full width. So if we say h full, does that change the height of the button? Okay, so it's 1020 by 150, which is probably correct. So the button is taking up the full screen. It's got like this pointer cursor, which is not what we want, but that's okay. So we can fix that by just saying like cursor default. And now we can click away, hopefully. Didn't work. Button at click, drop down open equals false. What are we doing that's not causing a click event to register? Oh, we have to add the friggin' width and height stuff back, dummy. We did it in DevTools, but we didn't do it in the actual thing. Boom. Beautiful. And when we shrink it down, we have this. Oh, we do have a little bit of a problem here. Nothing is clickable right now because this button is still visible. Okay, so let's make sure that button only can exist on bigger screens. So we're going to go hidden SM block. I guess we'll just do all this stuff on small screens, just so it's obvious that none of it applies by default. Okay, so now we've got this button. It's not even being displayed, which is what we want. We can click here. Everything is kind of working normally here. If we expand this, this is working. Everything kind of seems good. Yeah, so I mean, like, that seems pretty good. So one thing that we could do is we could think about extracting this drop-down logic. I'm a little bit hesitant. Actually, no, now that we made this image separate, this is going to be easy. So that's sweet. Okay. Yeah, my desktop. What I normally do is I just select everything on my desktop and put it in a folder called Desktop June 18th and throw that somewhere. And then I can go and recover it if I ever need to. But most of it is literally disposable crap. And by most of it, I mean all of it. Okay, so let's make a drop-down component. So new file, dropdown.view, view, fix this indentation. We'll grab this. We will throw it in here and then think about how we're going to make this work. So one thing that's kind of gruesome is we're going to have to wrap it in yet another div. Forgive me, but it's the nature of the beast. And we're going to want to, it's going to be more elements. How would you rate Taylor's front end Tailwind stuff? I mean, he used to not be able to do any front end stuff, and we paired on Vapor stuff, doing Tailwind front end stuff for a couple weeks, and now he's pretty good at it. So, yeah, not too bad at all. All right, so I want to make this drop down like reusable. So we'll start by just like copying all this stuff and just deleting the stuff that's not related to this component. And then we'll just make it so we can like slot some things in and out and stuff like that. So we'll use isOpen instead of dropdown open. isOpen. We'll get rid of toggle dropdown. We'll just have a toggle. And yeah, I mean, that should be good. So we're going to want a slot for some stuff. So thinking. Let's make this relative. Trying to think if we should just make this a slot. Let's start by just doing that. So we'll just say slot name is dropdown. We'll just delete some stuff here and slowly kind of port some things over, get everything kind of working. So let's import dropdown from there. Is the invisible button, does the menu close when you click on a link in the dropdown? Not currently. We have to think about that. Does the invisible button, I'm asking if the invisible button sitting on top of the menu when it's open. Not sure what you mean. Okay, so we can do like a template here. Throw this stuff in there. What am I doing here? This is going to be a drop down. We only really want to pass through this one piece for now, so we'll just do it like this. Oops. And what's the symbol that they use for this again? Hash sign, drop down. Open the menu and try clicking a link. I think the menu will close and the link will be clicked. Click a link, it stays open. I mean, if we change this to like account, support, sign out, we should be able to watch a change up there if it's working. Account, support, sign out. And that's because this div is positioned. It has absolute on it, and the button behind it is also absolute, so this takes precedence in the z-index order. because it's later in the DOM. Okay, so this is working now. So let's componentize the trigger. So I think all we really want to do here is add a slot here called like trigger. And we'll grab this image and we'll move the image out here. Template, trigger. Now we're going to have some things baked into this button that we don't want yet, but we can work with that. Okay. So now we need to pull some more things out. So this is what I meant when I said it's going to be like div central. So basically this whole class attribute we want to remove from here, and we want to put it on some wrapper element, which I guess will make a span. It's kind of gruesome because we want to be able to set focus styles on the button. And this might not work for that. Let's just kind of get it in place for a second and see what happens. It doesn't really need to be block, but whatever. So see how now like the button has like focus styles that we don't want it to have. So I'm trying to think, like, there's obviously a couple different ways we can handle this. Also, I'm noticing like this has moved slightly, which is always annoying to track down the cause of that. The only thing I can think of is this button is 32 by 32. Span is 32 by 32. If we just move this out here and then delete the button. So now it's in the right place, right? So there's something about the extra wrapper that's causing things to shift down by a couple of pixels, which is probably not the end of the world, but it would kind of be nice to figure out. I think it's just actually a display thing on the button. Let's just set the button to be block, so we're not getting weird inline behavior. We could also say align middle. I think we'll solve it too. Yep. But I think since most of this stuff is always done in like a flex container anyways, it's probably just easier to just do block. Okay, so let's think about what we want to do to focus styles here. So I'll talk through a couple options in my head. One is we could of course accept a prop that's kind of like classes that should be added to the button, which I think would be okay, but not great. I kind of don't like when you expose the ability for people to just add arbitrary classes through props. It feels like it makes more sense to me to expose like some sort of data-based thing, or even exposing. I mean, the other option is to use JavaScript to handle focus management here, which I think is the more interesting solution, even if it's not better. So I'd be curious to try it. Let's see what happens if we try and make that work. So what I want to do is I want to use basically scoped slots, and this microphone's starting to get a little loose here. I think it's going to tumble one day. I want to basically be able to track some state inside this component to know whether it has focus, and pass that information to the slot so the slot can determine if it should add certain styles. So I think we could actually just do something like @focus equals Button focused equals true. We'll just track this as stay here. Button focused was default that to false, I guess. Then on blur, we can say button focused equals false. And then here we can just pass through button focused, or we can just call it focused, button focused, or has focus. Let's change button focused to button has focus. The way that we handle click outside is we just literally have a button that takes up the whole screen, and when we click outside of it, when we click on that button, it closes. So check this out. If we do, let's do like BG red 500 on this button. When I open this, is there a build error or something? Okay, let's see. Where's this friggin' button? My cool demo has been, the opacity 0 is the problem. Get rid of the opacity 0 for a second. So you see this is what's happening now. Interestingly, that means that clicking these images doesn't close it. So we've kind of revealed a little bug, sort of. So you can see this whole red area is the button. So we should probably add a Z index to some of this stuff, which is unfortunate if I'm being honest, but that's okay. We'll have to add another div. So let's say that we want a Z index of Tailwind gives you 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So if we think like 50 is for modals, which are always going to be on top, then I would say that we could probably safely start by saying this is 30 for the button. And then this drop down can be 40. I'm trying to remember exactly what we have going on with this open and close stuff, because it's a little bit confusing to me why we have to have some stuff prefixed and not. I guess we can just do this on small screens and above. I mean, this is kind of dark in general, actually, because we still have some knowledge baked into this component about the fact that drop-downs only work on large screens. So I think in a perfect world, I actually think the better solution is to duplicate more of this stuff than we're currently duplicating. Like, we want to have this drop down with all this stuff rendering on desktop, but on mobile, we don't want to render the drop down at all. So I think it's probably conceptually simpler to duplicate this div and put it here and have this hidden on mobile too. And then we can have this drop down just be visible. It can be like hidden SM block. And let's just see how much we've messed things up here. All right, so there's our our drop down. Now, interestingly, I would think this would be rendering, but I guess it's not right now, which seems a little odd, but why is this have no size? Okay. It still has no size though, which is a little bit unusual to me. See how this div is considered to be 32 pixels by 0 pixels? So like if this had overflow hidden on it, all of a sudden the contents are hidden because this has no size. I would have thought that this would take its size from the, oh, it's because of the freaking absolute positioning. Okay, that's okay. We can move some stuff. All right, everything's starting to make sense to me. So let's get rid of all this SM stuff. We just want this to be working everywhere. Right? Because we're just not even going to show it on small screens, so it doesn't even really matter. And it looks like our stuff here is still working. We can simplify some classes on that, which is nice. And then up here, we get like this madness. This is 32 by 0, but again, that's on purpose. So now we can go to the drop-down, and we can sort of grab, let's see here, let's get rid of this MT5. We'll change it to MT3 because that's what we had here. And it's really about like deciding how generic do we want this component to be. I think I'm comfortable with it being knowledgeable about the positioning, but I don't want it to have any opinions about the background color or any of that stuff. So we can put this stuff here. This doesn't have to be relative anymore. Okay, and then let's get rid of this BG red stuff for a second. Okay. Still seems to be working. And simplify some of this stuff. So let's see, we've got hover text white, that's going to stay, but this is going to go, this MT3 I'm pretty sure we got rid of. Text gray 400 can go. And then all these SMs basically just become normal because we're toggling this entire component now, which simplifies some of this stuff. And then similarly, since we're toggling this entire component here as well, we can just have this span and all this stuff just kind of work. And yeah, and then we can have that change on XL because that's necessary. Okay, so this is still looking good. On smaller screens, it's still looking good. And then we can simplify some stuff here too. So here we've got SM hidden, that's totally fine. Everywhere this stuff can go. So it makes the individual links a little simpler. You have a little bit of duplication in terms of like the actual list of links or whatever, but I'm not too worried about that. Okay, so I think like we're in a better place than we were. So now we can get back to what we were trying to accomplish with the focus styles. All right, so we can grab some stuff from the slot scope here. They changed the name of that in Vue 2.6. Vue slot scope. Slot scope. vslot. vslot, and then the name of the slot. Oh, this is interesting. So you don't use this syntax, I guess, when you're using. Can I? Yeah, okay. That's kind of what I was hoping. All right, so we can do something like this. We can grab the slot props out. So what do we call it again? We called it has focus. So we'll grab has focus. And then we're going to grab these styles. And we're going to conditionally apply those. So we're going to say class. We'll just paste those in. We use the object syntax. We'll wrap these up as a string. And we only want to render those if the button trigger has focus. Fingers crossed what we have created here works. Did not. Okay, let's see. So here's our button. We have not added the classes that we want. We have no view errors. If we look at the drop down, button has focus is true. Oh, duh. We don't need the focus at the prefix for these. Please work now. No, still doesn't work. Okay, so we got this. We go to this. Let's see. Outline none, border white. Oh, because we have the other border colors overriding it. Okay, so let's do this using array syntax instead. So it has focus. If it has focus, then we want to have border white. If it doesn't have focus, then we want to add these styles. And we should probably bake the outline none stuff into the button, which is, that's the wrong button. Don't tell the accessibility people. But as long as the consumers of this remember to always add their own focus styles, then you're safe. But it's unfortunate that we can't really do like a good accessible by default. Okay, so now we still get focusing happening. It's just happening using JavaScript dynamically in the browser. So whether or not this is the absolute best solution for this, it's still kind of cool because we got to do some stuff with scoped slots. We got to kind of do some event triggering stuff. Kind of feels like kind of a neat JavaScript-y solution to me. I kind of dig it. So let's just quickly do a little recap and make sure everything's working. This stuff looks like it's working. If I hit escape, it closes. If I click, it closes. If it's open and I shrink the window and then bring it back, it's still open. Don't know if that's good or not, but that's how it works. If we open this, everything here looks fine. And then we open here, the drop down's open, this is still open. So it kind of just remembers like whatever the state was, which kind of makes sense, but it's fine. So yeah, I think this is pretty good. We got like our focus states happening. I mean, in some ways you could think like whenever the drop down is open, you could also consider it to have focus, you know? But we could do that here technically too, since we could have the button, or we could have the drop down kind of pass us information about whether it's open. Maybe we'll just do that out of curiosity too. So see where we have like has focus. Let's do like is open, and we'll just pass that to it as well. And then we can say is open, and now we can say has focus or is open. And now you see you get that ring. So it's white when it's focused. It's white when it's open. Even if I click some other stuff, as long as it's open, it stays white. So that's kind of neat because we have a little bit more flexibility there. Because now we can just say we want the same styles on focus or open. Cool. Yeah, so Is the dropdown still okay on XL? Oh yeah, good point. We never even really looked at XL. Good point. So if we click this, it's a little hard to see the top, but it also kind of seems like the top is cut off. All right, we have a little bit of tinkering to do here. So you can see here, we've got this div. If I just give this a background of a different color for a second, just so we can kind of see where it actually is. Oh no, it's still correct. Just something about, it's because it's white on white and like the shadow is not very strong. Makes it a little bit difficult to see. So I don't think Steve had like an outline or like a subtle border in his original design, but maybe we should consider adding a bit of a border to the box. Let's just try border. See what that looks like. So we can see it now. I think it makes it look worse, but you can see it a little bit better. Here, the grim part about borders is they freaking get in the way of the edges of the drop down. Does that happen on other sites? Yeah, it happens here too. It's just not quite as noticeable. Can I accept this? It's because it's like on this on the dark background, right? It makes it harder. Yeah, we could just add the border on extra large screens just to make it a little bit easier to see. And this thing that goes, see how we get like, when this is focused, it goes white. That's not really going to be great. So why don't we do XL border indigo 500 or something. Yeah, something like that is pretty decent. Yeah, I think that looks not too bad. Part of me wonders if we should try like a darker border color. I'll probably regret this immediately. That's too dark. So I think the default is 300, which I think that'll suffice. Cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is decent. I think I feel good about what we got here. Can anyone think of any other things we should check out or little edge cases or anything? If not, then I'll probably just wrap it up because we've been going for just about an hour bang on. So yeah, that would make a good time to cut off the stream. So yeah, unless anyone can think of anything else to test with this little component before I decide to just turn off OBS, then yeah, we'll be done. So yeah, I think we're good. IE8 test, okay. Won't even work on IE11 the way that we built this site. So anyways, I hope that was fun. It's kind of fun doing a little bit more viewy kind of behavioral stuff and less just CSS stuff this stream. So that's kind of neat. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the stream. I think that's like officially the last sort of thing I need to do for building out this UI now. So for the rest of this week, I'm going to be focused on kind of planning out all the lessons for this free course. So yeah, hopefully this dry run has been kind of entertaining or informative, and then the actual polished, finished course will kind of go through some of the stuff in like a kind of a better structured, more educational way, and less just watching me kind of flounder through things. So yeah, thanks again, and I'll catch you next time I stream. Hopefully can still do some streaming in the future. But yeah, it's been fun. See ya.